In February of 2008, inside a stylish holiday apartment nestled in the heart of the city, a woman's body lay lifeless. Her name was Anna Páez, 35 years old. A rising fashion designer. Vibrant, warm, and full of ambition. And someone, she thought, she could trust had lured her straight to her death. This is the story of a murder so chilling, so intricately staged, that for a time, police believed it was the work of a sexual predator. But the truth was even darker. It was a betrayal carved not in impulse, but in calculation. They called it the near-perfect crime. But perfection is fragile. And monsters always leave footprints. Barcelona. A city of light, color, and charm. The kind of place where you'd walk the streets and feel like life itself is buzzing around you. But back in February of 2008, something much darker was hiding in the shadows of this beautiful city. Inside a small, rented holiday apartment, police found the lifeless body of 35-year-old Anna Páez. She was lying still, no visible signs of struggle. No forced entry. No screaming neighbors. Just one woman. Dead. In a crime scene that felt off. To anyone looking from the outside, it didn't make sense. Anna wasn't the type to get involved in dangerous situations. She was a respected fashion designer. Hardworking. Kind. Trustworthy. The kind of person people leaned on. And maybe that's what made her the perfect target. Because the person responsible for her death wasn't a stranger lurking in the dark. It wasn't some faceless predator. It was someone Anna called a friend. Her name was María Ángeles Molina, though most people knew her as Angi. She was successful, confident, and charismatic. She ran her own business. She dressed sharp. She knew how to command a room. And she had Anna completely fooled. They'd known each other for years. Worked together. Ate meals together. Shared personal things. To Anna, Angi was almost like family. But what Anna didn't know was that Angi had been living a double life. A life made up of lies, stolen identities, and carefully crafted deception. And that Anna was standing right in the middle of a trap she didn't even know had been set. A few days before Anna's murder, Angi had gone to a real estate office in Barcelona. She was wearing a wig, fake documents in hand, and signed a lease for a short-term apartment. The name on the lease? Anna Páez. Not only had she rented the flat under Anna's name, she also withdrew €600 from Anna's bank account that same morning. CCTV footage later showed her walking into the bank in disguise, slipping into Anna's identity like it was just another outfit. She'd planned every detail. Then came the message, a casual invite from Angi to Anna. Just dinner. A little catch-up. Nothing suspicious. No red flags. Anna showed up at the apartment, completely unaware she was walking into a setup. She had no idea this dinner would be her last. We don't know exactly what happened behind that door. But we know enough to paint a haunting picture. Angi greeted her. They probably exchanged small talk. Maybe even laughed. And at some point, Anna was drugged. The exact substance was never identified. But whatever it was, it worked fast. Once Anna was subdued, Angi took a plastic bag, placed it over her head, and sealed it tightly with layers of tape. No screaming. No fighting. No way out. Anna died slowly. Silently. In a space that had been chosen days in advance, rented in her name, with the woman she thought was her friend standing over her. But the horror doesn't stop there. Angi wasn't just trying to kill Anna, she was trying to sell a story. She needed police to believe Anna was the victim of a violent, random sexual assault. Something messy. Something that would distract investigators from the truth. So she went to a male brothel. Paid 2 sex workers for semen samples. She collected them in a jar, brought them to the apartment, and left them there. Like some twisted prop in a fake crime scene. She wanted this to look like an unsolved sex crime. A tragic, freak incident in the middle of the city. She almost pulled it off. When police arrived at the scene, the setup worked. At first, it looked like exactly what she wanted it to, a brutal, random act of violence. But things started to unravel. For one, the apartment lease was in Anna's name, yet none of her close friends or family knew she had rented any such place. And there was no reason for her to have done it. Then came the CCTV footage. The bank withdrawal that morning. A woman in a wig walking into a branch and pulling money from Anna's account. It wasn't Anna, but someone who had gone out of their way to look like her. It didn't take long for Angie's name to come up. When police searched her home, they found something chilling: Anna's real passport. Her ID card. A stash of documents hidden behind a bathroom wall. Not just Anna's. There were other names. Other identities. Other frauds. Angi had been taking out insurance policies and bank loans using stolen IDs, including Anna's. Over €1 million in potential payouts had been lined up. All in Anna's name. And the most horrifying part? The entire murder was part of that plan. Kill Anna. Make it look like a sex crime. Let the insurance money come rolling in. It was cold. Calculated. And had it worked, it might have gone unsolved for years. But Angi wasn't quite as clever as she thought. She slipped. Just enough. Left just enough breadcrumbs behind. And the investigators were hungry. They began digging through Angi's financial records. Tracing the timeline. Matching witness testimony. Even Angi's boyfriend came forward with documents he found hidden in their home. But even when the walls started closing in, Angi denied everything. She told the court she was out shopping when Anna was killed. Claimed she'd gone to El Corte Inglés to buy a watch. Later, she changed her story, said she stopped at a local convenience store because, in her words, "without yogurts or condensed milk I am nothing." The courtroom went silent. But the evidence? It screamed. Eventually, she was sentenced to 22 years in prison, 18 for the murder, and another 4 for document forgery and fraud. Still, some details remain hazy. Some questions, unanswered. And the people closest to Anna are left wondering, how long had Angi been planning this? How many lies came before the final one? And was Anna the only target? Because the trail Angi left behind, those names, those policies, it didn't end with just one woman. And what the police found next would crack the whole case wide open. By the time Angi was arrested, the mask had fully come off. To the world, she had once been a successful businesswoman. A mentor. A friend. But beneath that polished surface was something far more sinister, something that wasn't just born overnight. The murder of Anna Páez wasn't an impulsive act of violence. It was the final piece of a plan Angi had been putting together for months, maybe even years. And when investigators started pulling at that thread, what they uncovered was the life of a woman who had mastered the art of pretending to be someone she wasn't. At the center of it all were the insurance policies. Not just one. Not two. But multiple policies, each one taken out in Anna's name. Some from banks. Others from retail chains like Carrefour. All forged. All false. The total value? Over €1 million. Each policy had its own payout terms, contingencies, and beneficiaries. But the pattern was clear: Angi stood to gain everything if Anna died under violent or mysterious circumstances. It wasn't just about money, though. Angi had a problem. Her business empire, if you could even call it that, was crumbling. Behind the scenes, she was drowning in debt. Creditors were circling. Her finances were in ruins. To everyone around her, she was still living the high life, driving a Porsche, attending upscale dinners, presenting herself as a woman of means. But none of it was real. And when the lies started to collapse, she made a decision. If she couldn't escape the debt, she'd kill her way out of it. The investigation into her past quickly became a hunt for how deep the deception ran. That's when detectives discovered something unexpected: another name. A woman named Susanna B. Susanna wasn't a friend of Angie's. In fact, she barely knew her. What she did know, however, was that she'd once left her ID card at a local copy shop. A small mistake. Something anyone could have done. But that single moment had changed everything. Angi had found Susanna's ID and used it to open accounts, apply for loans, and even connect it to false insurance paperwork. By the time police traced it back, Susanna had unknowingly been entangled in fraud schemes worth tens of thousands of euros. And she wasn't the only one. It turned out Angi had been harvesting identities like trophies. Any piece of personal information she could get her hands on became a potential tool, another name, another number, another pawn. She would walk into banks or agencies in wigs and tailored outfits, pretending to be whoever the paperwork said she was. She was careful, practiced. She had studied the system and learned how to manipulate it. But in Anna's case, the con took a deadly turn. The court documents described the crime as unquestionably premeditated. And the language they used painted a chilling picture. This wasn't just a murder, it was a fabrication, a cover-up, and a betrayal so intimate it left even seasoned detectives shaken. By now, the evidence against Angi was overwhelming. Surveillance footage. Testimony from bank staff. Insurance brokers who remembered her. Witnesses who saw her in disguise. And of course, the physical items found in her home, Anna's documents, the chloroform, and a detailed paper trail of forged signatures and falsified accounts. But what truly disturbed the courtroom wasn't just the planning or the fraud, it was how coldly Angi denied everything. She sat through the trial with confidence. No signs of guilt. No real emotion. When questioned about her whereabouts on the night of the murder, she rattled off mundane details: shopping, food, yogurt. It was surreal. Even when Anna's grieving family was in the room, Angi stuck to her story. She showed no remorse. No flicker of regret. Nothing. It was as if Anna was just a name on a form. A check on a to-do list. That was when prosecutors knew they weren't dealing with someone who had snapped. They were dealing with someone who had calculated every step. Someone who had treated a human life like a line item in an insurance scam. And then came the boyfriend. He had been living with Angi, unaware of what she was doing behind closed doors. But after the arrest, he came forward with a box of documents he found hidden behind their bathroom cistern. Inside were Anna's original ID cards, her passport, and more paperwork linking Angi to the fraudulent activity. There was no way to explain that away. Angi's defense tried, of course. They pointed to the lack of direct witnesses. The mystery drug that was never identified. The gaps in the timeline. But none of it held up. The court called the evidence abundant and conclusive. In the end, she was found guilty, not just of murder, but of falsifying official documents, committing fraud, and impersonating others with malicious intent. The sentence was clear: 22 years in prison. 18 for the murder of Anna Paez. For more for the deception and forgery. But even behind bars, there are those who believe Angi hasn't told the full story. Because the thing about someone like her is they rarely stop at just one victim. The discovery of the forged identities opened new investigations. Financial institutions started combing through years of records. Other names began to surface, people who had never even met Angi but had debts in their names. Some had their credit destroyed. Others had loans they didn't recognize. She had left a trail. And while none of these cases ended in murder, they all shared the same pattern. Deceit. Greed. And a chilling lack of empathy. Some experts have gone so far as to suggest that Angi displayed traits consistent with sociopathy, an ability to mimic emotion, build trust, and manipulate others for personal gain. But when things stop benefiting her, that's when people become disposable. Anna wasn't just a victim of fraud. She was a victim of trust. She trusted Angi. Believed in her. Saw her as a friend. And that trust was weaponized against her in the worst way imaginable. What's most disturbing is how close Angi came to getting away with it. Had she been a little more careful, a little more subtle, the story might have been very different. But like most con artists, her downfall came from believing she was too smart to get caught. She underestimated the investigators. Underestimated Anna's family. Underestimated how the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. Still, the question lingers, was Anna really the only one Angi intended to harm? Or was she just the first one who fit the plan perfectly? Because when a person like Angi exists, someone capable of smiling at you while planning your murder, you can't help but wonder. Who else came dangerously close? Even after the trial ended and Angi was sentenced, the story didn't feel finished. Anna Paez's family had justice, but not peace. Because how do you grieve someone when the way they were taken is so cruel, so calculated, that it doesn't even feel real? Anna wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. She wasn't a random victim. She was hunted, by someone she called a friend. That fact haunts people. And it's why this case became known in Spanish media as El Crimen Casi Perfecto, the near-perfect crime. Because it almost worked. Angi had thought of everything. The forged documents. The fake apartment. The semen from the brothel to stage a sexual assault and throw police off the trail. Even the alibi, driving to Zaragoza in a Porsche to retrieve her father's ashes, all designed to mask what she had done just hours earlier. But it wasn't perfect. Not quite. She overlooked one thing: human behavior. People don't just disappear without someone noticing. They don't just die without someone asking questions. And murder, no matter how clever the setup, always leaves a trace. The psychological profile of María Ángeles Molina revealed more than just greed. It suggested a dangerous personality type, charming, manipulative, but ultimately detached from the reality of human emotion. She knew how to win people over. Anna Paez certainly wasn't the first. Friends and associates described Angi as confident, persuasive, even magnetic. She could talk her way into anything, and she often did. But underneath that charisma was someone playing a long game, seeing people as stepping stones, not relationships. And as the fraud cases piled up, it became clear, Anna's murder wasn't some sudden breakdown. It was the end point of a pattern that had been growing darker and more daring with time. Angi had been pretending for years. Pretending to be rich. Pretending to run businesses. Pretending to be someone else, over and over again. She lived through other people's identities the way most people live through stories. And when reality caught up with her, she chose violence. The woman who once presented herself as a powerful entrepreneur, an example of female success, was now sitting behind bars, stripped of everything. But even prison didn't change her story. She still denies everything. She says she was shopping. That she was misunderstood. That the evidence is all coincidence. That's the final twist in all this. Angi, even now, won't admit what she did. There's something almost colder in that silence than in the crime itself. Because what she's doing now is rewriting history, at least in her own mind. But not everyone is so easily fooled. The public didn't forget. The case was too bizarre, too terrifying, to fade into obscurity. People still talk about the case. They wonder how someone could orchestrate something so elaborate, and then smile about it. The rented apartment in Anna's name. The documents hidden behind the toilet cistern. The chloroform found in Angi's home. The sex workers she paid to hand over semen in jars. The forged policies. It reads like a novel. But it happened. And there's another question that continues to gnaw at investigators. Did Angi ever plan to kill again? You see, Anna wasn't the only identity she'd stolen. There were others. People with active policies in their names, created by Angi. People who had no idea they were being used as part of a long con. If Anna hadn't died, would one of them have been next? Maybe it was a matter of time. Maybe Anna was just the first test run for a plan that was going to grow. Maybe the €1 million wasn't enough. We'll never know. But the potential victims, the near misses, they're left to live with the chilling reality that their lives were once just paperwork to a woman who didn't care whether they kept breathing. And perhaps the most disturbing part is how believable she was. She didn't have to break into houses or steal wallets. People just handed her their trust, and she weaponized it. Angi wasn't hiding in the shadows. She was hiding in plain sight. Wearing makeup, drinking coffee, attending business meetings. Living two lives in full view of everyone. And when it came time to strike, she did it without hesitation. No confrontation. No struggle. Just drugs, and tape, and silence. Then, she wiped the scene, locked the door, and left. Cold. Precise. Clinical. Anna's family still struggles with the way the case was portrayed in the media, so focused on how smart Angi was, how almost perfect the crime had been. Because for them, this wasn't a clever story. It was the brutal end of someone they loved. A sister. A daughter. A friend. The prison gates closed on María Ángeles Molina in 2012. 18 years for murder. For more for fraud and identity theft. But long after the verdict, her shadow never really left. Because this wasn't just a crime, it was a blueprint. A window into how far one person can go when they see human beings as a means to an end. And in the aftermath, what she left behind wasn't just grief, it was fear. For Anna's family, every unanswered question became a wound. Why Anna? Why that night? And the one that no one dares to say out loud. Could this have been stopped? Police believe Anna had no idea her identity had been stolen. She never saw the paperwork. Never noticed the missing funds. Never suspected that her own friend was systematically building a financial death trap in her name. By the time she found out, it was already too late. In the months after Angi's sentencing, investigators reviewed her old records, combed through her business dealings, followed every trace of the paper trail she left behind. And what they found wasn't just criminal, it was disturbing. There were multiple aliases. Dozens of applications. Some denied. Some approved. And at least 2 more individuals whose personal details had been quietly stolen, just like Anna's. But unlike Anna, they were lucky. They didn't get invited to dinner. They weren't lured to a flat with tape and poison waiting behind the door. They were the ones who got away, without even realizing how close they came. And that's what makes Angi's story so terrifying. She didn't kill out of passion. She didn't lash out. She planned it like a business move. Cold. Efficient. Calculated. Everything had its place, the alibi, the fake assault scene, the semen in a jar, the tape, the drug. All of it put together like pieces of a twisted jigsaw puzzle, with one missing edge that finally brought the whole thing crashing down. She thought she was untouchable. She believed the disguise would work. That the apartment rental in Anna's name would go unnoticed. That no one would ask why a woman with no enemies had died in such a violent, methodical way. But there's always a crack in the mask. Angi's undoing wasn't just the evidence, it was arrogance. She thought she could outsmart grief. She thought Anna's family wouldn't fight. But they did. They pushed. They questioned. And when authorities started looking closer, the entire house of cards collapsed. But even now, behind bars, Angi hasn't shown remorse. No apology. No confession. No closure. In a 2019 interview request from a Spanish journalist, she declined to speak. No comment. No statement. Just silence. Some say she refuses to acknowledge the trial ever happened. Others believe she's still hoping, somehow, for a reduced sentence. But here's the truth, people like Angi rarely stop believing in their own lies. And that's what makes her so dangerous. She lives in a world of illusions. Where victims are numbers. Where trust is just a tool. Where friendship is something you fake, until the money comes through. For Anna's family, the wound never healed. Birthdays came and went. So did anniversaries. Holidays. And each one carried the weight of the same memory, that Anna didn't die in an accident or a robbery gone wrong. She was murdered, by someone she loved. It's the kind of betrayal that doesn't just take a life. It breaks everything it touches. And to this day, people still struggle to explain how it happened. How someone so polished, so presentable, so persuasive, turned out to be a predator. But maybe that's the point. Angi didn't look like a killer. She looked like a friend. And maybe that's the scariest kind of monster, one who knows how to smile while drawing the blueprint for your death. If this case shocked you as much as it did us, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to True Crimes Now for more chilling stories just like this one. What do you think was going through María Ángeles Molina's mind? Was this truly a near-perfect crime, or was she always destined to get caught? Drop your theories, questions, or thoughts in the comments below, we're reading them all. And remember, trust is the deadliest weapon in the wrong hands. Stay safe. Stay curious. And we'll see you in the next one.